Good morning. It's so nice to see real people in a real room. So it's really good. So happy to be with you this morning. It's such a special time, and really thankful for kind of the hard work of the team to get all this ready in the last couple of days. So it's really thankful for them and all they've done. So this morning we're going to start by looking at that chapter we read, or part of that chapter we read in Luke chapter 1. And we're going to look at those first 17 verses. So I don't know about you, but one of my highlights over the past year was The Masked Singer. Saturday nights were brilliant because of The Masked Singer. Who was behind the mask? It was incredible. You heard their talent, you were given clues, but it was absolutely impossible to know who was behind the mask. Only when the virtual crowd yelled, take it off, was it revealed, and there a celebrity would be who had just kind of knocked out some stunning songs. The Masked Singer kept making you wonder, who is this? Glimpses are given, but clarity is difficult to come by. As we restart our journey in the book of Luke, we are in a section of Luke which seeks to show us who Jesus really is. So throughout Luke, Jesus has been making some astonishing claims about who he is. In chapter 4, Jesus claims to be the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy about the coming king, the coming Messiah that will save the people. Indeed, more than that, Jesus claims to be God himself coming to visit his people. In the previous chapter, in chapter 6, he has delivered a great sermon, and the sermon was all about how his people should live together, or how his people will live together as a new community defined by love. And as verse 1 reveals, as soon as he has finished this sermon, he moves into the hustle and bustle of the small town, the small city of Capernaum, and Jesus is going to base his ministry from that place for the next part of Luke. So in this section, Luke brings to our attention two great miracles. We had the healing of the servant, and we also had the raising of the young man. And so as we read this account, we wonder why. Why do we have these two miracles placed in Luke? Why does Jesus perform these two miracles? Well, the first miracles show to us a number of things. The miracles show to us that the promised coming king has authority. So they're a display of Jesus' authority. And the other reason why he performs the miracles is that he wants us to see that he comes with authority, but he comes with compassion. So he combines these two great truths together, the one who has authority, but who exercises compassionate authority. So let's first of all look at how his authority is revealed in this passage of the Bible. Authority is a loaded word. We struggle to embrace it personally, and I suppose as a society. And we're always encouraged to challenge authority, to ask questions of it, never just to sit back and accept it, are we? And so many of us have this kind of really uneasy relationship with authority, probably because we've had bad experiences where authority has been misused and abused. We have it in our media, how the authority has been corrupted, everything from the police to the church, everything from government to your employer. You all come across these incidents and moments where you can say, actually, authority, that's corrupt. That's really not how things should be. However, Luke is going to show to us and reveal to us an authority which is utterly different to anything which we know about in this world. It's an authority which is based on ensuring that goodness and blessing follows. An authority that isn't self-giving, but is self-giving and not self-serving, An authority which is marked out by compassion and which rejects indifference. So moving through this passage in Luke, Jesus is going to declare his authority and that he is the true and great King who was sent from God the Father to transform all the darkness in our world to light. He heals the sick and he raises the dead with a word. And as we read about these miracles, what we're being shown is a little bit of a glimpse of what his kingdom is like. His kingdom will be a place where wholeness abounds and where no more losses are suffered. The brokenness that comes with separation and pain are not part of his new kingdom. It is a place of eternal wholeness and of lasting joys. And so we're introduced to a rather surprising figure in this first section, verses 1 to 10. We come across an authoritative Roman centurion, but he's breaking the mold. He is a complete, unique person within the Roman army, no doubt. This man should be treating his servants as merchandise, and he should be treating the people that his army has conquered as subjects who are unworthy of his time. Yet, the servant totally goes against the grain. He loves his servant and wants his full restoration. He is well liked by the people, and so well liked that the Jewish elders go on his behalf to Jesus asking for the healing of his servant. And what do the Jewish elders say? They say, he's a good man. He deserves you to act on his behalf because he has done good. But the Roman centurion comes to Jesus with a message which has so much more understanding than the Jewish elders that he sent. This centurion knows that he cannot appeal to Jesus on the basis of what he's done, but he can only come to Jesus with humble faith. This guy knows what authority looks like. He's issued hundreds and probably thousands of commands to his men, and when he says it, it is done. The message he sends to Jesus is this: say the word and my servant will be healed, in verse 7. It's an incredible statement of faith. The centurion knows that Jesus is authoritative. And he knows that Jesus just needs to speak and his servant will be healed. Jesus doesn't need to perform any sort of rituals. He doesn't even need to be near his servant. He just says, come and say the word. And so he just asks for him to speak and to end the misery of his servant and replace it with joy and healing. But then the action moves on. Jesus leaves Capernaum, goes to the small town of Nain. And then he displays his great power in a new and different way. We witness in Nain an incredibly sad scene. It is desperately sad. It's the scene of a widow who has lost her son. And Jesus comes and he stops the procession and moves towards the body of the dead man and says in verse 14, young man, I say to you, get up. As we read this incident in the town of Nain, the crowd will be taken back because dead people just don't rise. What is more, Jesus does this miracle of resurrection in front of a crowd. And this just brings increasing authenticity to the story and to his declaration that he is the promised king. You can just imagine the chatter in the community after this event. Bizarre and completely beyond belief. But the people would no doubt have been thinking back to the prophet of God, Elijah, that we read about in 1 Kings. Elijah the prophet also came across a widow in the town of Nain. But as you saw, there are deep similarities because both raise a young man, but there are incredible and marvelous differences. Elijah needed to cry out to God. Elijah needed to perform certain actions before God would raise the boy. Here, Jesus just says a word, No intricate rituals. He doesn't even pray. He just speaks and it is done. He speaks and the boy is raised from the dead. For the crowd, as news begins to filter out, after seeing and hearing all that Jesus is doing, they would have been thinking back to Genesis 1 and how God spoke and creation came into existence. And they noticed the parallels with Jesus. Jesus speaks and it is done. Jesus is backing up his claims to be God, to be the promised king sent from God. But what kind of king is Jesus? Well, the next thing that we notice about Jesus is, yes, he has authority, but he is compassionate. He comes with a compassionate authority. I think one of the challenges for us as Christians and for even non-Christians is that it's so easy to sit on the sofa and rage at all that is going on in the world around us. But to choose to show compassion means that we need to move from off the sofa and step towards those who are enduring injustice. We need to step towards those who are hurt and are broken. And we need to step towards those who lack the hope that Jesus gives. And the thing about this passage is that it challenges us because it shows us what Jesus does as the Son of God. He moves towards, he is always moving towards others out of a heart of compassion. In verse 13, Jesus comes across the sight of the distressed woman. And he feels deep pity for her. B.B. Warfield, an old kind of thinker, said, when he saw the widow of Nain, it set our Lord's heart throbbing with pity. It was compassion that moved him to heal the centurion servant. It was compassion that motivated, that was at the root of all that Jesus did. These are not one-off events. This is not a couple of random, rare occurrences where God shows compassion. The Bible is full of compassion. The Bible is full of the compassion of God. From the Old Testament all the way to the New, we keep getting scenes of God's compassion. Lamentations 3:22, we read, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. When we go up to the New Testament, Matthew chapter 9, Jesus sees the crowds, and they're harassed and they're helpless, and he has compassion on them. For us, we struggle to reach the depths of compassion that Jesus does. Jesus' emotions outstrip our own emotions in depth of feeling, because he's truly human, but he is the perfect human. We suffer from compassion fatigue. We live in an age where we are constantly bombarded with the stories of the world in our 24/7 news cycle, and it can be overwhelming, and there's so much wrong with the world, and it's just so easy just to sit back and be overwhelmed. Yet Jesus' feelings are real, and he has this unrestrained emotion of compassion as he sees the plight of the widow, and as he hears the story of the centurion, and as he sees all the hurt that goes on in the world. It is the emotion of compassion that moves Jesus towards others. He is moved by loving compassion. It was his compassion that took him to the cross. He was moved by our situation. He was moved by those who had rejected the values of God and who had accepted the values of self, which would only lead to destruction. He was moved towards those who were outside of his family, outside of God's love, and he willingly gave himself up so that we could enjoy a seat with him around God's table and enjoy the innumerable blessings that come with life in the kingdom of God. As Christians, we want to cultivate hearts of compassion, don't we? We want to be those who mirror the compassion of Jesus. We want to move towards those who are struggling and who are finding life hard, who are stuck. We want to be a people who thoughtfully and compassionately seek to move in a direction towards others, not to be standoffish, not to hope that somebody else will show compassion instead of us, not to hope that the suffering will go quickly. But how do we do this? There seems so much hurt. How do we show compassion? Do we just tell ourselves every morning, I'm going to be compassionate today, and gee ourselves up to show compassion? The issue then becomes, what if we get tired of it? What if it becomes weedy? What if it just becomes a burden? What if it becomes cynical because no one's really kind of showing us compassion? How do we move on from that? No, we don't self-motivate ourselves, but as Christians, we are so connected to Jesus, and because we're connected to Jesus, from Jesus there is this wellspring of life that keeps flowing to us, that refreshes and renews us constantly, and which gifts us lasting rest. Jesus does what we cannot do. He is the one who perfectly displays compassion. And so we rest in Jesus, the truly compassionate one. We rest, and as we are freed from the need to do compassion to make us feel good about ourselves, to prove our worth, but because we're connected to Jesus, what does that mean? The goodness and compassion that flows from Jesus into our lives spills over from us into the lives of those around us. That's how we do it. We don't need to do anything. Jesus does it for us. And we just want to take what he gives, that refreshment, and pass it on to others. For those of us who are struggling this morning, Jesus has a deep compassion for you and for me. He will help. Many times I've just said help this year. Not having the words, not knowing what to do, but just saying help. And he helped. Every time I asked for help, he helped because he is compassionate. That may have been a reminder of his own compassion towards me. It may be that for you too. It may be that a thought comes to your mind, a moment of clarity, and God just brings your focus back up to himself, and he reveals a little bit of who he is to you at that moment. It may be that God brings a moment of peace in the time of stress. It may be that a friend just kind of texts you just at that right time. God works compassion in many ways. And know this morning that his heart is full of compassion for me and for you today. But our final question is this: how do we respond to the question, who is Jesus? Remember, what is Luke trying to do? He is trying to show us who Jesus is, and here he wants you and me to see that Jesus is the true and good King. And as we reflect on this truth, we must then discern what our response must be to this claim. As Jesus interacts with the friends of the centurion, verse 9, he turns to his friends and to the crowd around him in amazement, and he declares about the centurion, "I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel." Jesus is almost speechless at the faith of the centurion. The centurion really gets who Jesus is and humbly submits to Jesus in all his royal authority. The centurion bows the knee before King Jesus. This is a living and breathing example of all that it means to be a follower of Jesus. In chapter 6, Jesus described what his followers would look like. Jesus' followers love their enemies. Chapter 6, 32 to 35. What does this Roman centurion do? He loves the Jews, the natural enemies. He has befriended them, so much so that they want to bless him. The disciples of Jesus do good to others. In verse 35 in chapter 6, what does this centurion do? He wants to do good to the servant. He wants him to be healed. It's as if before the eyes of the crowds gathering before Jesus in these incidents, that they're being shown a living and breathing example of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Everything that Jesus has talked about in chapter 6 is alive in this Roman centurion. To embrace the posture of the Roman centurion brings freedom, great freedom. Freedom from the need to impress or to improve. And it's the freedom to enjoy who you are and to enjoy all the blessings that come from the compassionate heart and the compassionate reign of King Jesus. For those of us who embrace Jesus in our lives, it's a call to mirror Jesus. It's a call to mirror the love and the compassion that he shows, to serve and honor, to include and to cherish all people. It's a call to submit to the values of his kingdom and to push aside the values of the kingdom of self. It's a call to act like the centurion. For others, it's a call to relationship with the compassionate King whose heart longs for you. It's an invitation to one day experience Jesus' kingdom in all its dazzling brilliance in the life to come, and for now to taste and enjoy the experiences of Jesus' kingdom in your daily life. To know the blessing that God goes with you, that you are not alone, that you have one who will do you good and will enable you to flourish. It is the freedom from trying to better yourself and to enjoy a new identity, an identity which is fixed and rooted in God, and an identity which you do not need to create or find anywhere. It's a call to relationship. In conclusion then, these two incidents vividly display the compassionate authority of King Jesus. We see him moved by the plight of others, and he moves towards them. Compassion compels him to act in kindness to bring restoration amidst the brokenness, to bring reunion where there has been separation, to turn despair into joy. He invites us to submit to his authority and to enjoy life in his kingdom. Thanks.